Ambassador Velira Nox stood silently near the wide observation window of her research vessel, the Silent Horizon. Outside, stars drifted slowly like distant fires, calm and endless. She had spent almost 200 cycles traveling through space, studying what most people no longer cared about: old stories, forgotten warnings, and ancient myths. The Scyroni Dominion was powerful beyond measure. Thousands of systems bent under its control. Worlds rose and fell at its command. Entire species had been absorbed, rewritten into history as conquered footnotes. Yet even the Scyroni feared one story, the story of humans. Velira still remembered the first time she heard the name. She had been young, barely allowed into the academy halls. An old scholar with fading scales had spoken quietly, as if afraid the past could still hear. Humans came from a small blue world. Soft skin, no claws, no natural armor, weak eyes, weak lungs. By every rule of survival, they should have vanished quickly. But they didn't. According to the legends, humans spread faster than anyone expected. They adapted to cold worlds, burning suns, toxic skies. They built thinking machines. They cracked moons. They fought constantly, against enemies, against allies, against themselves. Most frightening of all, they felt too much. They loved strangers. They died for ideas. They destroyed themselves over beliefs that could not be touched or measured. And finally, the story always ended the same way. Humans wiped themselves out. Power without wisdom leads to extinction, the scholar had said. Velira believed that story for most of her life, until 3 days ago. The signal appeared from a region of space marked empty. No trade lanes, no colonies, nothing worth exploring. But the transmission was strange, structured, intentional, ancient. The ship's computers struggled to decode it. When they finally did, Velira felt something tighten in her chest. The patterns matched Terran communication systems, human systems, systems that should not exist anymore. She ordered an immediate course change. 2 days later, they arrived, and everything she believed shattered. A massive structure floated in the darkness, ancient, scarred, silent. Its surface was damaged by time and radiation, yet still intact, and carved across its hull were symbols Velira recognized instantly. Human letters. English. Her breath caught. This was no myth, no legend. This was proof. "Ambassador," her second officer whispered, "what are your orders?" Velira couldn't answer right away. Her hands trembled slightly as she stared at the station. Someone had activated it recently. Someone was still out there. "Contact High Command," she said finally. "Tell them we found something impossible." As the message was sent, a deep emotion settled in her chest. Fear mixed with awe. If humans were alive, then the universe was about to change, and Velira had a terrible feeling. This discovery was not meant to bring peace, because somewhere in the dark, something ancient had noticed them first, and it was watching. The reply from High Command arrived faster than Velira expected. The image of Admiral Korvax filled the main screen. His scarred face showed discipline, but his eyes betrayed something else: unease. "Ambassador Velira," he said slowly, "repeat your report." Velira straightened. "The structure is real, human in origin. The signal matches ancient Terran patterns. I am fully confident." Silence followed, long, heavy. "If this is true," Korvax finally said, "then the foundation of our history is wrong." "Yes, Admiral," Velira replied, "and that is why we must proceed carefully." The Admiral exhaled. The Council has been notified. A diplomatic response has been approved. Velira felt a wave of relief, but it didn't last. 12 warships will be dispatched, weapons powered down but ready. 12? Velira asked carefully. That may appear threatening. It will also appear cautious, the Admiral replied. You will lead the contact mission. You know the legends better than anyone. The screen went dark. Velira turned back toward the stars. The choice had been made. History was moving again, and there would be no stopping it now. 5 days later, the fleet arrived. 12 massive Scyroni warships surrounded the ancient station, their engines glowing softly like caged suns. Though no weapons were aimed, everyone on Velira's bridge felt the tension. Power like this always frightened others, even when it claimed peace. Velira spent those days buried in old records. Human descriptions conflicted wildly. Monsters, poets, builders, destroyers, heroes, villains. The only constant was one word: unpredictable. "Ambassador?" her officer Taryn said quietly. "We're receiving a response." "From the station?" "No," Taryn said, eyes widening, "but behind the fourth planet." "That's impossible," she said. "Our scans showed nothing there." "I know, but something is there now." Moments later, a ship emerged. It was small, old-looking, almost fragile. A few officers relaxed. One even laughed under his breath. Velira did not. The ship's design was plain. No visible weapons, weak shielding, ancient propulsion. Too ancient. "Scan it," Velira ordered. "Every layer." The results confirmed what everyone expected. Primitive, outdated, harmless. And yet, Velira's instincts screamed danger. Then the communication channel opened. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force vessel Resilience. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." Velira felt her breath catch. Earth. Humans. Real. "I am Ambassador Velira of the Scyroni Dominion," Velira replied carefully. "We detected a signal and came in peace. We believed your species was long extinct." There was a pause. Then the human voice returned, with something like quiet amusement. "Extinct?" said Chen. "No, Ambassador. We were simply quiet." Velira felt fear and wonder twist together inside her. "We wish to understand you, and perhaps begin peaceful relations." Another pause. "Remain where you are. Do not approach the station. We will contact you again soon." The channel closed. Velira stared at the small ship floating alone among giants. It looked weak, but something about it felt like a closed fist. Because while the Scyroni believed they were being watched, they didn't yet realize they were being tested.
The waiting was worse than any battle. For 3 long days, the Scyroni fleet held position around the ancient station. Engines hummed softly. Sensors swept the darkness again and again. Nothing changed. The human ship, Resilience, remained still, quiet, distant, patient. Too patient. Velira barely slept. Each time she closed her eyes, old lessons echoed in her mind. Humans never rushed. Humans endured. Humans waited. She returned to the ancient records, reading between broken lines and half-burned data. The texts described humans as emotional, chaotic, driven by fear and hope in equal measure. They spoke of terrible wars, of planets turned to ash, but they also spoke of kindness. Humans who sheltered weaker species, humans who mourned enemies, humans who chose mercy when destruction was easier. How can one species be both? Velira whispered to herself. "Ambassador," her officer Lero said softly, breaking the silence. "Incoming transmission." The screen lit up. "Ambassador Velira," Commander Chen said, her tone calm but guarded. "Our leadership has agreed to a limited meeting." Velira's heart jumped. "That is welcome news." "A neutral platform will be constructed halfway between our positions. 3 delegates from each side. No weapons." Velira nodded. "Agreed. I will lead our delegation." The channel closed. For the first time since arriving, Velira allowed herself a small breath of hope. Construction took 2 days. Platform was simple. No symbols, no flags, no displays of power. Just a room, table, and 2 doors facing each other. Velira chose her companions carefully. Lero, young and curious, unburdened by fear. Scholar Merith, wise and observant, trained to see truth beyond emotion. Before departure, Admiral Korvax appeared on her private channel. "This could be a trap," he warned. "I can send soldiers." "No," Velira said firmly. "That would ruin everything." Korvax studied her. "You believe in them. I believe in learning and in not repeating old mistakes." The shuttle ride was quiet. No one spoke. Each of them carried the weight of history in their thoughts. The platform door opened. The humans entered. They were smaller than expected, fragile-looking, no armor, no claws, no visible weapons. And yet, their eyes, focused, alert, alive. Commander Chen stepped forward. Her dark hair was short, her uniform plain. She looked tired, but unafraid. "Ambassador Velira," she said, offering a small nod. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for trusting us," Velira replied. They sat. For hours they spoke, of history, of mistakes, of fear, of survival. "We hid because discovery usually ends in conquest," Chen said plainly. "We chose patience over pride." Velira felt something shift inside her. "You were watching us," Velira said gently. "Yes," Chen admitted, "and what we saw concerned us." The words stung, but they were honest. When the meeting ended, there was no hostility, no threats, only cautious understanding. Velira returned to her ship feeling something unfamiliar, hope. But as her shuttle docked, alarms suddenly blared across the fleet. Ships were moving, weapons charging. "Admiral Korvax," Velira demanded over comms, "what is happening?" His reply was cold. "The Council has authorized preemptive action." Velira's blood ran cold. "You promised peace," she whispered. "The decision is final," Korvax said. "Return to your quarters." The channel cut. Velira stared at the view screen in horror as Scyroni warships silently turned their guns toward the human vessel. Because in that moment, Velira realized peace was never the danger. Fear was.
Velira did not move for several seconds. Her mind refused to accept what her eyes were seeing. The fleet, her fleet, was shifting into attack formation. Weapon arrays unfolded like the claws of a predator preparing to strike. This was not caution. This was execution. "Taran," she said sharply, "how long until weapons are fully charged?" He swallowed. "Less than 1 cycle, maybe 40 minutes. Velira's chest tightened. 40 minutes to stop a war. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Korvax again. "Admiral, this is madness," she said. "The humans have shown no aggression. They trusted us." Korvax's expression flickered, but only for a moment. "High Inquisitor Draxel has presented evidence. The humans have been spying on us for centuries, preparing." "That is not invasion," Velira snapped. "That is fear, the same fear you are acting on now." "The Council will not risk extinction," Korvax replied. "Stand down, Ambassador." The channel closed. Velira felt something break inside her. This was no longer diplomacy. This was murder dressed as strategy. "Taran," she said quietly, "can you open a hidden channel to the human ship?" His eyes widened. "That would be treason." "Yes. Can you do it?" The bridge was silent. Every officer knew what she was asking. Finally, Tara nodded. I can mask it as background radiation, but once it's done, there's no undoing it. Do it, Velira said. Now. While he worked, Velira watched the countdown tick lower. Warships locked targeting paths. Energy cores glowed brighter. Then Taran looked up. Channel open. Velira stepped forward. Commander Chen, if you can hear me, this is not official. The Scyroni fleet is preparing to attack. You must leave, now. There was a pause. Then Chen's voice returned, calm but sharp. Thank you for warning us, Ambassador. May I ask why you're risking everything? Because it's wrong. You came in peace. I won't let that be answered with slaughter. Another pause. I wish I could say escape is possible, Chen said, but we anticipated this. What do you mean? Appearances can be misleading, Chen replied quietly. Before Velira could respond, alarms screamed across her ship. The neutral platform exploded. Fire and debris ripped through space. Velira froze. No, 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 she whispered. The platform has been destroyed, Taran shouted. Human delegates were still aboard. Velira's breath vanished. Commander Chen, she cried into the channel. Are you alive? A different voice answered, cold, controlled, burning with fury. This is Lieutenant Commander Webb. Commander Chen is alive, injured. 3 of our people are dead. Velira's vision blurred. I swear, I didn't know. This was not authorized. I believe you, Webb said, but understand this. Someone in your fleet murdered diplomats during peace talks. Velira knew the truth instantly. Draxel. He never wanted peace. Before she could respond, the view screen changed. The human ship's outer hull began to peel away, like shedding skin. What emerged beneath was sleek, glowing, terrifying. Not primitive, not weak, hidden. Then the Scyroni fleet fired. Energy beams filled space, and the human ship moved. Not fled, danced. Shots missed. Missiles passed through empty space. Then a single beam of white light fired back. One Scyroni cruiser split cleanly in half. Silence followed. Velira stared in awe and horror. They had been wrong, so very wrong, because the myth of human weakness had just died, and something far more dangerous had taken its place. Velira's hands trembled as she watched the battle unfold. The human ship did not rush, it did not panic. It moved with calm precision, like a mind that had already seen every possible outcome. Another beam of white light fired. Another Scyroni cruiser went dark, engines cut, weapons disabled, drifting helplessly through space. They're not destroying us, Taran whispered. They're disabling us. Velira nodded slowly. They're showing restraint. Even now, even after betrayal, even after murder. That realization hurt more than the explosions. New sensor alarms blared. Multiple contacts, an officer shouted. No, hundreds. They're appearing everywhere. Space itself seemed to ripple. Human ships emerged from nothing, sleek, powerful, silent. They surrounded the Scyroni fleet in a perfect sphere, each one aimed, each one ready. The fleet was trapped, outmatched, exposed. Then a familiar voice echoed across every channel, strained with pain, but unbroken. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Velira's breath caught. Your fleet is surrounded, Chen continued. Power down all weapons immediately. You have 60 seconds. This is not a negotiation. The bridge was silent. Admiral Korvax appeared on the main screen, his face pale. We can still fight, one officer said weakly. Korvax didn't answer. He stared at the human ships surrounding them, hundreds of them. They let us strike first, Velira said quietly. They let us reveal who we really are. Korvax turned toward her. His voice was hoarse. You knew. I warned you, and you ignored it. Seconds ticked down. Korvax clenched his jaw. Pride warred with survival, honor with reality. Finally, he opened a channel. This is Admiral Korvax of the Scyroni Dominion. We accept your terms. Weapons powering down, cruelty, no executions, no rage, only control, only order. Velira felt shame burn in her chest. They could have destroyed everything. They chose not to. Hours later, a human officer arrived at Velira's ship. I am Captain James Okoro, he said calmly. Commander Chen has requested your presence. She's alive? Velira asked. Injured, he nodded, but alive. Relief nearly buckled her knees. As Velira boarded the human shuttle, she saw the resilience truly for the first time, its true form revealed. Smooth curves, soft light, living plants visible through wide windows. This was not a warship. It was a home that could defend itself. Inside the medical bay, Commander Chen lay resting. Bandages marked her injuries, but her eyes were sharp. You warned us, Chen said softly. You chose what was right. I failed, Velira whispered. People died. Yes, Chen said, and that matters. But what happens next matters more. Velira looked at her. What do you want from us? Chen's gaze hardened, not with anger, but resolute. Justice, she said, and truth. The ones responsible must answer, not just to us, but to every species your dominion has crushed. Velira understood then. This was not revenge. This was reckoning, and the Scyroni could no longer hide from it, because surrender was only the beginning, and the cost of the past was finally coming due. Velira stood alone in the quiet chamber aboard the human flagship, staring out at the stars. They looked the same as always, cold, distant, uncaring, yet everything had changed. Behind her, the door opened softly. Commander Chen entered, moving slower than before, her injuries still fresh. She stopped beside Velira, following her gaze into the darkness. Beautiful, Chen said quietly, and dangerous. That space for you. Velira nodded, just like history. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Velira turned. You said justice. What does that mean to humans? Chen studied her carefully. It means truth first, accountability second, and change last. Without all three, justice is only another form of violence. Velira felt those words sink deep. The one responsible is High Inquisitor Draxel, Velira said. He feared losing control. He feared your existence. Chen's jaw tightened. Fear has destroyed more civilizations than war ever did. Over the next days, evidence surfaced. Human intelligence recordings, intercepted Scyroni communications, and finally, confessions. Draxel's network unraveled faster than Velira expected. His own followers abandoned him when they realized the humans already knew everything. The Council had no choice. Draxel was arrested. The announcement shook the Dominion. For the first time in centuries, a High Inquisitor stood accused, not by enemies, but by truth. The trial was held on neutral ground. Delegates from 27 species attended. Species Velira had only read about in censored archives. Species her people had conquered, silenced, or nearly erased. They were not extinct. They had survived, and they had been waiting. Draxel stood before them, defiant to the end. I acted to protect the Dominion, he said. Humans are a threat. Chen stood from her seat. We were a threat once, to ourselves. That is why we chose to change." The tribunal ruled swiftly. Guilty. Not execution. Exile. A prison world cut off from power and memory. The humans insisted on it. "Killing him ends nothing," Chen said later. "Let him live with the truth he tried to bury." Velira felt something she had never felt toward an enemy before. Not satisfaction, closure. In the weeks that followed, news spread across the galaxy. The myth of human extinction was dead. So was the myth of Scyroni supremacy. Trade routes shifted. Alliances questioned old loyalties. Younger Scyroni began asking dangerous questions. Why do we conquer? Who decides strength? What if we are wrong? Velira was summoned before the council. Some called her a traitor. Others called her a visionary. She accepted both titles in silence. When the session ended, she found Chen waiting for her on the station balcony. "You're standing at the edge of a long road," she said. "It won't be easy." "I know," Velira replied. "I may not live to see the end of it." Chen smiled gently. "Neither did the humans who started our change." Velira looked out at the stars again, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on her. For the first time, she did not feel crushed by it. She felt chosen. Because the hardest battles were no longer fought in space, but in the hearts of those brave enough to change.
6 months passed. For the galaxy, it was a blink. For the Scyroni Dominion, it was an earthquake. Velira felt it everywhere she went. In council halls once filled with pride, there was now uncertainty. In military academies that taught conquest as duty, instructors lowered their voices. On public networks, citizens whispered questions they had never dared ask before. Humans were real. Humans were powerful. And humans had shown mercy. That last truth disturbed many more than defeat ever could. Velira walked through the Grand Archive, a place she had loved all her life. The walls still glowed with ancient knowledge, but something was missing. Whole sections had been sealed, histories rewritten, species erased. She now knew why. "You're looking for what was taken," said a voice behind her. She turned to see Scholar Merith, older now, her posture slower, but her eyes sharper than ever. "Yes," Velira said quietly, "and I don't know where to begin." Merith nodded. "Neither did the humans once, but they began anyway." That sentence stayed with Velira. She began small. She pushed for open records. She requested shared research exchanges. She argued again and again that cooperation was not weakness. Each step was met with resistance. "You're turning us soft. You're betraying our ancestors. You're inviting extinction." Some nights Velira believed them. She dreamed of burning worlds and screaming stars. She woke with her scales cold, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. Then the messages came. Quiet ones, private ones. Young officers asking for off-record meetings. Scientists requesting access to human data. Governors asking, carefully, what cooperation might look like. Seeds. Small, fragile seeds. Commander Chen contacted her regularly, not as a commander, not as a threat, as a guide. "You don't convince an empire by arguing. You convince it by showing another future is possible," Chen told her once. So Velira arranged exchanges. A Scyroni engineer worked beside a human designer and learned that efficiency could exist without cruelty. A human medic treated Scyroni civilians without judgment. A joint exploration team discovered a world neither species could survive alone, but together they could adapt. Every success was quiet. Every failure was loud. The opposition still had power. Old generals spoke of revenge. Old politicians spoke of inevitable war.
Fear was not dead, but it was no longer alone. One evening, Velira stood again at an observation window, much like the one where this journey had begun. Stars drifted by, patient and eternal. Chen stood beside her. "You're tired," Chen said. "Yes," Velira admitted. "And afraid." Chen nodded. "That means you're doing it right." Velira let out a small, tired laugh. "I used to think humans were terrifying because of your weapons. Now I know the truth." Chen raised an eyebrow. "And what's that?" "You're terrifying because you believe the future can be better, and you're willing to wait for it." Chen smiled, soft and real. "That belief," she said, "is contagious." Velira watched the stars and felt something she had never felt before. Not certainty, but direction. Because once a seed takes root, even the hardest ground cannot stay unchanged forever.
Change did not come gently. As months passed, the Scyroni Dominion began to split, not in open war, but in belief. Some worlds welcomed cooperation. Others resisted with fear sharpened into anger. Velira felt it most when she returned to the council chambers. The same hall that once echoed with confidence now felt tense, fragile, like glass ready to crack. "You are moving too fast," one counselor said. "Our people are not ready." "We were never ready for conquest either," Velira replied calmly, "but we did it anyway." Murmurs spread across the chamber. Another counselor rose. "Human influence is everywhere. Our traditions are fading." "No," Velira said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "Our lies are fading. There is a difference." That night, Velira received the threat. It was simple, anonymous, cold. "Stop this path, or you will not survive it." She stared at the message for a long time. Fear returned, not sharp panic, but deep exhaustion. She had given everything to this change, her reputation, her safety, her future. Was it worth it? She contacted Commander Chen. "I don't know how much longer I can hold this together," Velira admitted. "Some days it feels like the past is winning." Chen listened quietly. "Do you know how many times humanity almost gave up?" Chen said at last. "How many times fear nearly pulled us back into darkness?" Velira shook her head. "More than we recorded," Chen said. "More than we remember. Progress isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It survives." Those words stayed with Velira. Soon after, the first real test came. A Scyroni patrol attacked a small allied world, one under human protection. It was a deliberate provocation, a message from those who wanted war. The council panicked. "They will retaliate," generals warned. "This will end in destruction." Velira stood before them, heart pounding. "Let me speak to the humans. Let me answer this mistake before it becomes a massacre." Chen responded within minutes. "We won't strike back, but we won't ignore it either." Human ships arrived, not to attack, but to shield. They evacuated civilians. They repaired damage. They broadcast the truth of what happened across open channels. The galaxy watched, and something unexpected happened. Scyroni citizens saw humans saving lives, including Scyroni lives. They saw restraint. They saw mercy again. The attackers were arrested by their own people. That night, Velira wept alone in her quarters, not from sadness, but from relief. The future was still uncertain, the danger was still real, but for the first time, fear had lost a battle. Velira looked out at the stars once more and whispered a quiet promise to herself, to those who had died, to those yet to come. "I will not turn back." Because when fear fails to win, it always tries again, and the next test
would demand even more courage. The warning signs came slowly at first. Velira noticed old symbols returning to public walls, military slogans whispered in training halls, speeches filled with words like purity, strength, destiny. The past was not gone. It was regrouping. A faction began to form openly now, calling themselves the True Dominion. They claimed Velira had weakened the Scyroni, that humans were manipulating the future, that mercy was a lie told by enemies. Velira read their statements late at night, her hands shaking. They sounded confident, dangerously confident. They are gaining support, Scholar Merith said during a private meeting. Mostly older generals and young ones who fear a future they don't understand. Fear again. Always fear. Velira nodded slowly. Fear is easier than change. Then came the message that made her blood run cold. A coordinated uprising had begun on 3 border systems. Human diplomats were trapped. Scyroni civilians were caught between sides. The True Dominion had made their move. Emergency council was called. Voices shouted. Accusations flew. "This is your fault," one counselor screamed at Velira. "You invited this chaos." Velira stood slowly, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it. "No," she said firmly. "This is the cost of hiding the truth for too long. Lies don't disappear, they rot, and then they attack." Some listened, many did not. She left the chamber knowing something painful. She could not fix this with words alone. She contacted Commander Chen. "They're forcing a choice," Velira said, "and it may come to war." Chen's reply was immediate. "No," she said, "it comes to clarity." Human ships did not attack. They arrived visibly, openly, across Scyroni space, not as invaders, but as witnesses. Every movement was broadcast, every action recorded. They protected evacuation routes, they defended civilians, they refused to fire unless fired upon. The galaxy watched again. Then something unexpected happened. Scyroni soldiers began to defect. Not loudly, not proudly, quietly. They laid down weapons. They escorted civilians instead of attacking them. They refused orders to fire on human aid ships. One young officer transmitted a message that spread like wildfire. "We were told strength meant obedience, but I see strength in restraint. I see strength in choosing not to kill." The panic set in. The True Dominion attacked harder. And that is when Chen made the call. Human forces disabled their command centers in minutes. No cities destroyed, no planets burned. The rebellion collapsed. Velira watched the feeds in stunned silence. It had been stopped without genocide, without erasure, without becoming what they feared. Later, Chen met her on a quiet platform. "You didn't win by force," Chen said softly. "You won by making people choose." Velira felt tears rise. "I was afraid I'd lose everything." Chen shook her head. "You already lost comfort. That's the price of change." Velira looked out at the stars, exhausted but standing. The past had fought back and lost. But victory never means the struggle is over, only that the next test will demand even more than before. After the uprising collapsed, silence returned to the Dominion. But it was a different kind of silence, not fear, reflection. Velira felt it as she walked through stations and cities. People watched her with unreadable expressions, some with respect, some with anger, many with quiet curiosity. They were thinking. That alone was new. The council reconvened weeks later, not in urgency, but in uncertainty. The old voices were still there, but they were no longer dominant. "We stopped a rebellion," one counselor said, "but we haven't solved the problem." Velira nodded, "Because the problem was never humans, it was us." The words echoed through the chamber. "For generations," she continued, "we believed strength meant control, that survival required domination, but the galaxy has shown us another truth." She paused, feeling the weight of what she was about to say. "The question before us is simple, but terrifying. Do we want to remain what we were, or become something better?" No one interrupted. Outside the chamber, news spread faster than any decree. Worlds requested cultural exchanges. Young Scyroni applied for human education programs. Former military leaders stepped down quietly. Not all. Some still resisted, but resistance was no longer the majority. Velira met Chen again, this time on neutral ground. No guards, no uniforms, no tension. "You're at a turning point," Chen said, "and turning points are dangerous." "I know," Velira replied. "If we fail now, the fall will be worse than before." Chen studied her. "What scares you most?" Velira answered honestly, "That I might be wrong, that this path leads to weakness, that someday my people will curse my name." Chen was quiet for a moment. "Every human who pushed change was cursed first," she said gently. "History is kinder than the present." That night, Velira recorded a message, one not required, not approved, not filtered. She spoke directly to the people. "I will not promise safety. I will not promise strength as you once understood it. I can only promise honesty." She spoke of fear, of mistakes, of the cost of pride. She spoke of humans, not as saviors or enemies, but as a mirror. "When we attacked them," she said, voice steady but heavy, "they showed us what we could become, not by words, but by choice." The message spread everywhere. It was argued over, mocked, praised, replayed, but it could not be ignored. Velira ended the recording with one sentence: "The future is not something we conquer, it is something we decide." She turned off the recorder and felt drained, empty and full at the same time. Outside her window, the stars waited. The future had not answered yet, but it had asked its question. And the answer, when it came, would demand a sacrifice Velira had never imagined making. The answer came sooner than Velira expected. It arrived not as an attack, but as an offer. The human coalition sent a formal proposal, clear, calm, and heavy with meaning. A new council would be formed, not ruled by one species, not enforced by fear. A shared table where decisions affecting many would require many voices. And they wanted Velira to lead the transition, not as a ruler, as a bridge. When she finished reading the message, her hands felt cold. If she accepted, the Scyroni Dominion would change forever. Power would no longer sit in one claw. Military authority would answer to shared law. Conquered worlds would gain voices. Old hierarchies would break. If she refused, the coalition would still move forward without Scyroni leadership at its center. Either way, the old dominion was ending. The council chamber was filled within hours. Voices rose immediately. "This is surrender disguised as peace. You would hand our destiny to outsiders. You're asking us to kneel." Velira stood quietly, letting the storm pass. When she finally spoke, her voice was tired, but steady. "No," she said, "I'm asking us to stand without stepping on others." One counselor leaned forward, eyes sharp. And what do the humans ask in return? Velira swallowed. They ask that I step down from all Scyroni authority. The chamber froze. Gasps echoed. You? Someone whispered. Why you? Velira answered honestly. Because change cannot grow if it looks like control. Because bridges cannot belong to one side. Silence followed, thick and painful. That night, Velira walked alone through the corridors of her ship. Every memory carried victories, failures, the life she had built. She stopped at the observation window one last time. Commander Chen joined her quietly. "You don't have to do this," Chen said. Velira smiled faintly. "That's how I know it matters." Chen studied her. "You'll lose your rank, your protection, your place in history." Velira nodded. "Or I'll earn a different one." "Are you afraid?" Chen asked. Velira took a long breath. "Yes," she said, softly, "but not of the future. I'm afraid of staying the same." The next day, Velira stood before the Dominion, broadcast to every world, every station, every ship. "I am stepping down," she said. Anger erupted, grief, confusion. She raised a hand. "I am not abandoning you. I am trusting you." She spoke of bridges and seeds and patience, of power that lasts longer than fear, of a future she would not control but believed in. When the transmission ended, Velira felt lighter and lonelier. She boarded a small, unmarked vessel, no guards, no ceremony. As the ship pulled away, the stars stretched before her. She did not know if history would remember her kindly, but she knew this: the bridge had been built, and now others would have to cross it. Because the final test was not about empires or war, but whether the future would honor the sacrifice made for it.
Velira Nox no longer held a title. She was no longer an ambassador, no longer a voice of authority, no longer protected by fleets or laws. She was simply Velira, traveling quietly among the stars aboard a small vessel that carried no flags. At first, the silence felt heavy. Then it felt honest. Months passed, then years. The galaxy did not fall apart without her. It did something far more difficult. It adjusted. The Scyroni Dominion changed slowly, painfully. Power shifted away from conquest and toward cooperation. Formerly conquered worlds gained representation. Old generals retired. Some resisted until the end, but resistance no longer ruled the future. The shared council formed, just as the humans proposed. It was imperfect. Meetings were loud, decisions took time. Progress was slow, but it lasted. Velira watched from a distance, sometimes from research stations, sometimes from small frontier worlds where humans and Scyroni worked side by side, building instead of taking. She saw children of different species learning together, arguing, laughing, imagining futures that did not include war as an assumption. That alone made everything worth it. One quiet evening, her ship docked at a familiar station. Commander Sarah Chen was waiting. Older now, scarred, still standing. "You vanished," Chen said with a soft smile. Velira returned it. "I wanted the future to breathe without me leaning over it." They walked together along a wide balcony, stars glowing beyond the glass. "Do you regret it?" Chen asked. Velira thought carefully. "I miss who I was, but I don't regret who we became." Chen nodded. "That's the hardest trade anyone can make." They stopped at the railing. "Do you know," Chen said, "humans used to think we were alone in the universe. Then we thought we were doomed by our own nature. We were wrong both times." Velira smiled. "So were we." They stood in silence, two figures from species once separated by fear, now connected by choice. Before leaving, Chen handed Velira a small data crystal. "What's this?" Velira asked. "A record," Chen replied, "of the first signal you found, the one that started everything." Velira accepted it carefully. Later, alone in her ship, she played it again. The ancient human transmission filled the quiet space, not as words, but as patterns, a message meant to endure. Velira finally understood it. It wasn't a warning, it was a promise that someone, somewhere, would choose patience over power, wisdom over fear, growth over domination. Velira looked out at the stars one last time. She had spent her life studying myths. In the end, she had learned the truth. Legends are not about the past. They are about the choices that shape the future. And somewhere, far from conquest and fear, the galaxy was still learning, slowly, imperfectly, beautifully, to choose better. The end. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.